It's our second broadcast of the day, and we're midway through London Fashion Week, and we're going to be talking about Jonathan Saunders. We've just been talking about Mary Kachanzi earlier, so it's great to talk about Jonathan because they're both such sort of stalwarts of the London scene. And I have some amazing London-themed panellists with me as well, who will very kindly introduce themselves, starting with Frances.
I'm Frances Corn, and I'm head of the London College of Fashion.
I'm Marion Hume, and I am a Londoner, but I am also the fashion editor of the Australian Financial Review.
I'm Sasha Wilkins. I'm the founder and editor of LibertyLondonGirl.com.
I'm Maggie Norden. I'm a Londoner. I'm a vintage fashion observer, and I'm creative director of media in School of Communication and Media at London College of Fashion, University of the Arts.
I know we're here to talk about Jonathan, but I do want to start by talking about LCF show because we obviously have Frances here and we have you here, Maggie, as well. Tell me a bit about the show and the response you've had to it.
Well, we've had an amazing response. As you know, Lou, you were involved in helping to select the students. We have 42 students who are eligible to graduate, but we decided to select right down to 10 because we were wanting to make the point that, particularly for MA students who are about to graduate, they really need to be thinking, you know, what's the business like, how are they going to build their careers, where do they want to pitch it, and that means editing it right down. And this is all part of our decision to actually locate the show as part of London Fashion Week, because we have not only the catwalk show but a major exhibition of all of our footwear, accessories, photography, filmmakers and so on. And with everybody coming to London having such a vibe at the moment, you know, we really wanted to celebrate the work and give the opportunity for lots of people to see the work of our students, and for our students to get as much feedback as possible. So, you know, we decided to showcase at the Floral Hall, at obviously the Royal Opera House, and it was fantastic. Lee Lapthorne did the production, and Tom Findlay from Groove Armada did the music, and you know, we felt the whole thing was really cool.
It's really interesting to me that you mentioned that business side, because that's one thing that's so great about Jonathan. And I was wondering, is he someone that you guys find that young students, you know, young fashion students are really looking up to, because it's someone who seems to really get that balance of commerciality and creativity perfectly right?
Hugely, the colour and the optimism as well. I mean, illustrators have been checking him out, his menswear, the separates. I would say he's been amazingly influential to recent graduates, actually.
I think he's consistent as well, isn't he? I mean, even when he's not been as significant as he is now, but I think there is something about him that has a longevity and has a sophistication, but has a coolness. And I think, you know, when we manage to do that as sort of British designers or whatever, that it's one of the things that's really unique, is it has its edginess, but it has something which, I don't know, just sort of keeps it really cool.
He was endorsed as well. You remember the Bird of Paradise, was it, when he did the connection with the McQueen show? Our students were high on that. I mean, the degree of research and reference there was wonderful, the Bird of Paradise and everything. So yes, really influential.
Sasha, why do women love wearing Jonathan so much? Because we were talking about this a bit before the stream went live, how everyone sort of got to that point where everyone wanted a Jonathan Saunders jumper. What's the appeal?
I think actually when Maggie said colour, I mean, I know fashion people tend to like to wear black and occasionally get very, very riotous with navy, but he just produces colour that looks great. The colours are never off. You know, sometimes you go to a show and it'll be bile green and emerald green, and the colours are just wrong. The colours are right for everyone's skin tone, I think, but he makes shapes that embrace the female form. And I'm really excited to see this show because I've been watching Twitter, and I gather there's quite a lot of bosom going on as well.
Well, it does feel very, it feels very optimistic and very feminine, and it got me thinking about this kind of reputation London has for being, you know, very, very kind of creative and a bit off the wall. And I think what's really refreshing about someone like Jonathan is he does kind of completely silence all that criticism of London. You know, it is a very pragmatic brand in the sense that, you know, it continues these strong ideas from season to season. You have the key pieces that move each season. It makes money. It's very profitable. Do you think it's actually more exciting to see something like that?
But I think it's interesting because I think, thinking about all the student collections that are coming through, I think there's been a shift. I think, of course, you get the off the wall, That's sort of part of it. But actually, I think the influence of people like Jonathan Saunders and others, American Trans, who you were talking about, that there is a sort of sense that you can have this edge and be slightly out there and experimenting, but still make clothes that people want to wear and people want to buy. I think the penny has dropped that if you want to be in fashion, you've got to sell. It is a business in the end, and you've got to know your market, and you've got to be prepared to understand what your brand is and who you're pitching it at. And so I think that's a sort of theme that for me has been coming through our students' work, but also through some of the collections over the last few years, which is a definite change. Obviously you're going to get the significance of people who want to work a bit like, Gareth Pugh, as he did. But if you think about it, there haven't been quite the same sort of edginess in that sort of way as there used to be. And I think that's very exciting.
The meticulous nature of his work as well. America Trans is the same. Mary print matches her go days, so when she goes up a size, everything is redesigned to fit the different size of body.
Yeah.
And Jonathan has always taken his prints and adapted them to the pattern pieces for each size. So that whatever your body type is, whatever size you're wearing, the clothes will fit and flatter your body.
Yeah.
And that's something I've noticed over the 12, 13 years I've been looking at the collections, is that the clothes are just better made and more professional.
He's taken it very slowly, and that's great. That he's kind of, we talk a lot of fast fashion, but what he does is it's like slow food, slow fashion. It's taken him a long time, and sometimes for designers when they start, we want something instant, and he of course also came into this at a moment with very, very tough competition.
Yeah.
You think of the other people that are his contemporaries, and some of them moved a bit faster and maybe got more acclaim, but hopefully what we're going to see now is the fruition of just going at your own pace, and as you've all said, the fact that people can wear these clothes.
I'm a bit obsessed with this slow fashion thing. I ask about it on every single panel, but I do find it really intriguing, which is where I get where it's come from. It's the kind of financial climate where people want to buy something that they feel is going to have some mileage, but I always think about the different type of consumer, and it's a woman buying it, not a man, and all these kind of ideas. And where do you think that kind of slow fashion?
I think some of it comes from actually fashion in London. It's of course there's the consumer side, but if you look at the British Fashion Council, and how much it has changed, how much London Fashion Week has changed, how mature it is, how sophisticated. There's space now for designers to grow up. There's money, there's competitions that they can win, there's sponsorship, and much more, there's mentorship. So we've built the framework now in which real talent can actually grow. And I think that's something that the British Fashion Council should be extremely proud of.
I think what's interesting is if you go this week to see the absolute colour there, the sun shining, but the British Fashion Council tomorrow, isn't it, with the international focus, new emerging markets. So I think not only is London kind of energetic, but it's showing and nurturing the other countries. Back to Jonathan again, the traditional way he used that screen process, that takes us back to people who would test different colourways. And so the whole sense of the foundation of what you do, because you're creative, because you want to express in a way that is going to be fit to function, but actually shows off the aesthetic skills, is very much what people were looking for. And it's like the other side of 3D printing or immersed culture online. So the two are fueling so well at the moment. I mean, it was so buzzy this weekend there, wasn't it?
It's wonderful, isn't it? Just standing at Somerset House and watching people. It's really exciting.
And it's packed. I mean, I think, we all know that.
Do you think that's a good thing?
Yeah.
I'm getting very fed up with having to sharpen my elbows to get through 300 bloggers taking photographs of Chinese and weird hats to actually get to do my job at the shows.
But I was going to say, I mean, that's been and also I think it's interesting, because I was thinking today, actually, how people are going to manage the shows, because if it carries on like this, the numbers of people that are coming and trying to get in,
I asked
it's
this
not
the
possible.
other
So
day,
that's quite funny.
and everyone was so pragmatic about it, and I think people kind of thought I was joking, but I was like, what hope does a designer have coming out of St Martin's or LCF now? Because the schedule is already so full. Everything is amazing. It's back to back.
Oh, that's easy. You add another day.
Do you think that's what
we used to joke that Fashion Week, we just called it Fashion Weekend, and we used to kind of make a kind of smirky expression as we said it. And now you've got 5 packed days of women's wear. Before we got onto menswear, you add another day. You fight with the Italians. We're better than them.
Your way in.
The Italians out.
But as someone who's going to all the shows, I can tell you, Friday is full of people who aren't going to get their shows seen by anyone apart from bloggers and people who happen to be here because Mark shows on Thursday night. Saturday morning's a bit dead. Then bam, Saturday afternoon we had Moschino. Sunday and Monday are insane because Americans will not come here. There's a couple of key shows on Tuesday morning, and then everyone's showing Tuesday afternoon are people who do not expect to get any audience.
But I think the only other way of looking at it, I went to the Whistle Salon show.
Me too.
Which, I really...
It was amazing.
It was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. And I just thought, and also it was interesting because it was a salon show, and it was small and it was intimate, and you could see the clothes and you could see the audience. And so you think, what I feel is that maybe people begin to select the sort of shows they want to experience because you can get everything online. So you don't, I know obviously it's not the same as seeing it and live sometimes, but it might be that we just sort of allow for the fact that, as you said, because of the pressure of the other fashion weeks, that there's amazing choice, and that people sort of select which type of show they want to go, and you can have a huge variety whether it is going to go. I went to go see some of the Kiev Ukrainian designers coming this morning, just simply to see what, again, a new voice was going to be like, and then go and see Westwood in the afternoon. Well, that's what London is offering, and that's maybe one of the things we've also got to celebrate.
I think Natalie is doing that. The very fact she's there, Natalie Massenet, it's possible that you could have one collection a year. Does it have to be every 6 months? It really is going to be questionable now, because of the way we live our lives in its screen culture.
The other thing about all this choice, of course, is it gives us as journalists this marvellous moment of smugness. You could have gone off to Kiev, and I could have gone off to, I don't know, Tanzania, and we meet later, and I'm like, oh, Francis, Tanzania was, and I'm sorry, we're very competitive, and we all
Last night was the key. There were 3 things happening simultaneously. There was the Woolmark Prize, which is of course big corporate money. There was Rihanna, which I described as a clusterfuck of revolting people, because I just have no desire to go to something like that. And then there was Thomas Tate showing in a garage.
Thomas Tate was amazing.
And there weren't that many people at the show, but it was all the grown-ups in there. There were no, I'm a blogger, but there were no infants there, and there were no hangers-on. It was just people who really loved fashion.
I like the infants and the hangers-on. I always
really.
I love that thing when you go into a room and you go, all those people, they don't have tickets. I don't know, maybe that's because
it's not much fun when you're actually supposed to be there.
But it's part of it.
When did that spring up?
It's not at the moment, because
I've
been going. I was one of those people trying to get into the shows once upon a time, but there are now hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. It is too oversubscribed.
And the thing is, I actually don't think they're even trying to get into the shows anymore. I think they're just standing outside and taking
photos.
I genuinely think this. I actually don't think they even try and see the fashion.
The continual complaint this week has been from editors with tickets who need to cover the shows who can't get in.
No, there's been a lot.
But then again, you're saying that it's kind of going to be democratized, and this is the new hot emerging talent. I say, as long as there's enough freebie crispy seaweed, like a lovely little packet of nipples, then it's fine. Let them all in. What I don't like are these kind of in-your-face fashion police. These ladies that go, priority booking, boom, boom, boom. Get a life. This is horrible.
Do you think fashion has got too high?
Oh, yeah. I tread on their toes, they can see me coming. No, it's not necessary to get that kind of behaviour.
Of order to it, because you do think, I was interested by what you were saying, Sasha, because I do think there is a point, where it makes fashion seem frivolous, and fashion isn't frivolous, but when people who are covering it critically, in the way that a film critic would cover a new film critically, cannot go and write about that collection because people are taking pictures of themselves outside, it worries me, because I think it would make someone walking past Somerset House go, look at them all looking so silly, when that's a very small part.
There are a lot of people out there who treat the shows as a holiday camp. They go and hang out at Somerset House, and I love that. If I was 15 again, I'd want to do that too, but it is very difficult to do your job when there's a lot of people basically treating it like they're on holiday.
But fashion's also culpable. It's hyped itself up, and it's always been a spectacle. So if you say that other festivals or art shows have more rigour and kind of solemnity. I think fashion is about allowing people to be there. Bloggers are of the moment. You've kind of encouraged it.
Yeah, I mean, I think whether it will shake down in a lot of ways, because it was really good going to the Saatchi galleries. You've got Margaret Howe showing, you know, where she does, Nicole, you know, so there may be that some people will actually go out rather than always being at Somerset House.
Yeah.
And you can be guaranteed with Margaret Howe that you're not going to be sitting behind a tranny in a big wig.
So,
you know, there are certain
the show was so
moments of
lovely this
pride.
morning.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a blogger,
Yeah.
so I am not, you know, dissing my own kind. It's just that there doesn't seem to be an awful lot of critical thinking about which bloggers should be coming. In the moment, it's a fairly open to all policy, but it can't be open to all because there's just not the space for it.
Well, then it's back to certain people who have kind of given too many tickets out. I mean,
Yes,
at the
there
end
is
of
that
the day,
issue.
there
Yeah.
is
No,
interest, energy, fun. You can't complain about that in an austere
not at all.
climate.
There's nothing more boring though than going to a fashion show where everyone in the room is invited. And it actually
Never been.
No, I can think of one, and you know, I'm showing the vintage, but Chloe had a show years ago where they made a credit card when, you know, that it seemed terribly novel to have this credit card and you had to put it through a receiver, so suddenly you realised how many people are invited don't show up. You know, and the fact that these seat fillers take the
But you have that
seats, and it
moment
was
where people
boring.
can't show up because they can't get there. You know, you always see tweets from like really great journalists being like, I just can't get to the show in time because I couldn't get out of the other one in time. And
Well, you know
that's
what
a
it
shame.
partly is? When I was an assistant, you'd sneak in and you might upgrade from standing to 6th row, but you'd get fired if you upgrade yourself any further. But a lot of people now who sneak in, they upgrade themselves to the front row and the second row.
Yeah.
They take up the seats, people don't know who they are, and then the editors can't get in because the standing seats are full. So there is an issue with that.
Well, there's a very interesting thing happening now, which I feel like a kind of proud mum, that all the people we've trained over the last 20 years are there, the writers running this publication or the
that's
other,
true.
and they see and they think, oh God, I remember her girls lettering, you know. So I think that it's actually an area that it has got to have showmanship. And if, as a respectable journalist of the old style, you can't muscle in, then shame on you. I mean, you know, some of the
think people
PRs
just need to work a bit harder.
are kind of difficult to wrestle through. The old stamp on the foot never fails.
But this, I'm really interested by something you said a bit earlier, Francis, which is about, it makes me think about maybe people should be thinking about the ways in which they're showing, because people are often, you know, throwing criticism increasingly at catwalk shows and saying, you know, you can't actually see the shows that well, and the seating arrangements. This happened a lot with the men's, with one of the venues, you know, unless you were literally at a certain point on the front row, you couldn't see anything from about here downwards, which was such a shame because it was a great venue and it should have been really brilliant. But it makes me think, should people be thinking about doing, you know, a static presentation that runs all day? And that's something that Jonathan has explored really successfully with his menswear. You know, last season, well, the season we've just had for the men's, he did this amazing presentation where he had static models, he also had racks of clothes, he also had a film showing, and I wonder if that's the
think
future.
so. I mean, I mean, certainly that's the way we look at it at the college, because because obviously we're having to showcase work, we can't show everybody's work, so we're having to make all sorts of selections and find other ways of showing the ones that we don't, so we have lots of films and lookbooks and things like that. But also I was really struck, I've done you know, couture a few times, and there's the sort of range of venues that are used and the different types of shows that are used, and you sort of feel that in a way maybe we've got to go back and think about it, because I mean, people say, oh, is there going to be the death of the show and everything, and I don't think so, because it's so much about the performance, and it's fantastic watching the people coming in, even if they are, you know, people that you're feeling immensely frustrated or you can't get in, but that drama is really important, and but I think it's back to the designers and the PR companies and, you know, and so on, to actually say, well, should we be showing somewhere else, because then it gives a whole other, you know, going to, you know, queuing up to go to the Saatchi on an amazing sort of sunny day was fantastic, really.
It will become the great debate, though, because we are kind of living through an age of re-enlightenment. Without a doubt, it's the cusp at the moment. And I think that if you think social media and all the talk and debate that goes with something when a film is directed well, when the interview actually does sharpen our curiosity. There is going to be all sorts of ways that we're going to be seeing that show. We'll be watching it on our wrist in a minute.
I mean, that's what the live streaming is.
Yeah.
It frees us up to do things in other ways.
But somehow there is, for all live streaming, there is the excitement of being
absolutely.
there. And the static show, we've all seen many of them, and you wish the designers well, and you can see the fabrics. It's not the same. And it doesn't get the same
frisson.
No, we don't cover it in the same way. So of course then designers are like, well, I have to have a show.
Is there, because I do agree, like obviously you think of like the amazing McQueen shows and the amazing Galliano shows, but then you think, like, could a designer even showing today do that? You know, they don't even have the time. Or you can't keep people waiting 3 hours now, unless you're Marc Jacobs. Obviously, that's the rule in fashion. Unless you're Marc Jacobs.
You can do. I was just thinking about the salon show. You know, the Whistles one, which reminded me of.
It was lovely, wasn't it?
It was really lovely, and you thought there weren't that many people there. You know, so again, you've got, and it was a range of people that you could really see the clothes, and it was a bit like, you know, it's very limited. So that, in a way, will bring in other people than who perhaps, you know, want to go and see that and don't want to go and see, you know, something which is much larger, much more experiential.
It's a very simple way of making sure that not many people come to your show. I think have your show 9 a.m. is hard, but 8 a.m. And if you want everyone to work really hard for it.
Well, it's very easy.
8 a.m.
Cream this morning, Sunday morning, 9 a.m., 31st floor of the Heron Tower on Bishopsgate. No one was going to be gate crashing that show.
You're not going to get into the toilet window on that one, are
No,
you?
you're really not.
Do you think young, because I'm interested to go back to the student aspect, do you think that young fashion students now are still aspiring to that idea of doing a great show? Are they looking to McQueen and going, I want to do that, you know, I want to have the theatrics? Or are they looking to someone like Jonathan and going, you know what, I want to build a brand, I want to make money?
I think you've got the range. I think it partly depends on the student and the sort of work that they're doing and the ambition of the student and their creativity and what they're wanting to do. So there will be, and I think that's great, because I would worry that it all goes down one particular one particular route, and I think it's very exciting what's happening with fashion at the moment. I was having a conversation with Harold Corder, you know, from the Met last week, and he was saying, you know, it's all very great at the moment, it's very sophisticated, but where is the real sort of edge to some of the designers that we've had? We're having this sort of moment in fashion where it's sort of, you know, very businesslike, very focused. We all understand why economically, but then you feel there'll be something else will sort of come forward in another sort of 4 or 5 years, and it'll be sort of really experimental and people doing something like a
But even
I was going to say the collaboration though is exciting at the moment, because some of them want to be the new Nick Knight, some of them obviously are kind of going to be the new Jonathan Saunders, but when you talk to them, it's strategic, it's working in how it's going to get a buzz on social media, and it's kind of planning for a year that is kind of 2016. So they're very aware of portability, mobility and technology. Doesn't mean they're not looking back and referencing and having fun, but it's a shift that is going to be very exciting.
Sasha, you do consultancy. Do you find that people are so switched on to that now?
Yeah, they are, but I think the thing we always have to remember is if you're building a brand that's going to have longevity, it will take a long time to get there. I mean, even with me, with Liberty London Girl, I started my business in 2006. So everyone likes to talk about me being at the vanguard of blogging. Well, I really was, because it was 6.5 years ago. And you know, with Jonathan, I was there, very proud that I was at his first show. It was a Great Eastern Hotel in February 2003 for Lulu Kennedy's Fashion East. He showed us Tatty Divine, who of course have been they sell such huge amounts, and with Roxandra Olenchik. The three of them on one show. But Roxandra got velocity a lot more quickly than Jonathan. But you could argue that Jonathan's got the bigger business now, though obviously Rox is doing incredibly well. But it's fascinating for those three designers. It's been a long time in the coming.
That generation, you did mention this earlier, Marion, but that generation is so successful when you think about them. You think about Chris Kane, Jonathan Saunders, Roxanne and Marion, all coming out at a really, really similar time. I think it's almost a shame, because I think for students today, they would look at the schedule and they think, you know, that's not possible. There's such an element of competition in the colleges.
Well,
I
said there was
love
new
that.
generation,
Yeah.
and I think that incentive is still going.
I think it keeps going.
But do you
That's- I
think the
think every
students
age-
feel that me and 4 of my peers will come out and will all be
yeah, they do,
successful?
because they're optimistic, they do. And
Well,
then
don't
they
you
have got
think
a
they
chance.
think me?
Yeah,
I
they
will.
do.
And they're not worried about the 4 of their peers.
No,
It's me.
it is me, and I think every age has got a different sort of pressure. You know, it happens to be that yes, there's a lot more now. Fashion's unbelievably popular. You could argue just been talking about all the bloggers. I mean, I think one of the great things that we do really, really well is the commentary. You know, we have some great journalists, we have the great bloggers, the photographers, illustrators, and there's huge competition there. But I think, you know, Marion's absolutely right. Everybody thinks it's going to be me. You know, who you know, and that's what you want. They've got to come out feeling, you know, with a realism. And I think being prepared to spend the time to really build properly.
And they know how to brand up. I mean,
They
think
do.
what's
Henry
going on
Holland.
YouTube, think
Yeah.
what's
Look at
with
Henry
it.
Holland.
Yeah, Henry
The
Holland.
absolute
So good.
triumph of brand over substance.
Yeah.
Sorry, Henry, but I think
No,
we
it's
all-
true. It's magnificent.
Yeah.
I mean, because he was early on that curve.
Very,
He understood
very,
it and he's done
very
it
clever.
Very
tremendously.
clever, very clever.
But
I mean,
perhaps
Pretty
some of
Polly
us will
think
want
he
to be
walk
at
on
shows.
water. I mean,
Yeah.
I spoke to one of their guys at an event recently, and he's just like, Henry's like a god. I mean,
Yeah.
he shifts product like you wouldn't
Yeah,
believe.
yeah.
I think the idea of someone being like a god has actually shifted as well. Because I think the fact that you can get there quite speedily, and as you've said, the people that last are the people who are the artisans, but understand how to use the new technology. This idea of reverence and being referential, I think there's more irony out there. I think they're actually quite
I
sceptical.
think that's a very London thing. I was thinking about this, and I think in London it's so designers seem so much more accessible, but mainly because you know they tweet themselves and they Instagram themselves, and you see them at shows and you see them out and about. But I was thinking, look at Paris. Look at I know everyone made such a hoopla about it, so I don't want to keep talking about it. But the whole Eddie Semaine, Raf Simons thing, you know that's so different to what we see here. That element of kind of
And the
being in a
control-
gilded
PR
cage.
control.
PR control completely. Yeah.
I'm sure
We're-
we all
we're
read
looking-
the editorial that Imran wrote on the Business of
Business of
Fashion,
Fashion, yeah.
about how he was
Yeah.
they were trying to control him.
Absolutely, yeah.
I don't think you see that in London in the same way. I don't think you see that same kind of.
It's
we
also
do see
that
the
we wouldn't
yeah.
tolerate
We wouldn't
it.
tolerate
Yeah.
it.
Like
No.
British
We're
journalists
cooler
are the
than that.
most. I don't know if it's cool. We're cool. We're certainly opinionated and spiky. So I just don't think we put up with it.
And we've got
actually,
Twitter.
Yeah, that's true. That's
And
true.
know how to use it.
But Maggie, your point about gods, that the other thing is surely that we've seen our greatest gods. We've seen what happens
Yeah, I agree.
when you get to the heavens. You know, we've lived through the brilliance of Alexander McQueen. You know, we are living through John Galliano's, you know, the trials that have happened to John because of his brilliance, and what happens when you're so brilliant and you get asked for more and more and more and more. And you're Mark Jacobs. It must be a great pressure to be Mark. So maybe for your students, I mean, do they want to be those people? They know what happens when you reach the upper cloud now.
It's not just fashion though, is it? I mean, I think because of the birth of reality television and programming and instant click culture, you are there if you're talented, you're ambitious, you're passionate. So that's not changed. What's kind of the new vocabulary is the fact that you know how to connect. And the self-branding, I think, is very interesting because it happens very quickly. There was a lovely student at the MA show, a Greek student, and she was showing a very interesting garment. It had cowbells, and it had some wonderful kind of woolly fur, and then there was this torso interesting bit of structure. And I said, it's fascinating because it could be art, it could be fashion. And she said, it's how I feel about my country at the moment. And again, she was planning on how to do the narrative tale as a short film, promote it into the layered culture. And so this idea of being able to, because it's the language and the screen content they're used to, I think is very interesting at the moment.
I think the other thing we have to think about as well is we live in a global market, so it's not like the old days where you might sell to one boutique in Liverpool and maybe if you're lucky you might get a stock interest in Paris. You've got people like Farfetch.com now,
Yeah.
and if you're familiar with Farfetch, where you can buy a dress that's only been bought by one boutique in Sofia or in Nicosia or in Ulaanbaatar, and you can get it and you can get it delivered to you within 3 days. And so the amount of stockists out there, it's huge. And I think that can only be a good thing for designers.
But at the same time, we've got people wandering around in the onesie. So this idea of, I'm just going to have a slouch day. I mean, wander through Westfield.
Some good clothes.
I didn't even put Jonathan Saunders and onesies together.
Are there going to be onesies coming?
You had a onesie?
I have
got
a onesie. I have a Japanese kiwi suit. It's got ears and whiskers.
Fine, that's fine. Good luck.
Let's take a look at the collection. This is our opening look. There are quite a few looks, so I think we'll speed through.
The embellishment is interesting.
And you mentioned before that you were saying on Twitter about that kind of the more sensual shape and being very feminine.
The shape is so strong.
See, these ochres and desert colours, I love them.
And his shows are always so fully realised. Last season we were up a tower with a sunset, and as the sun went down, the show started. It was utterly ravishing.
Perfect.
I think the way he's using the fabrics to bring about the contrasts and show off the shape and the feminine form is just stunning.
Feels very easy though. I feel like I always find this with his men's stuff, because I'm obsessed with his men's. I think it's incredible. It always feels so easy and so relevant while still being sort of in some way sort of fashion forward and directional and having a point.
When we were talking about Proenza and the power of the couple, obviously he's got Evie working with him as well. And I do think there is that thing where you've got a woman in your business who's helping you think about how women are going to wear it.
It's interesting because before people were using it's eye-poppingly good and it's optical. These are actually quite classic for him, aren't
really
they?
classic,
Textural.
I think what's exciting is that people are really understanding how to use digital print now in a way that isn't sort of putting it all over everything. It's actually making it work much more discreetly.
Is that latex or the print? I can't see from here.
I think it's a latex.
It's a latex, yeah.
There's a lot of emphasis on the bust, which is not usual.
But that's
for
quite
him.
refreshing.
And that's low.
We've been
And also
talking
that
quite low,
corseted
and
waist as well.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of clinch to whether it's with the belt or the corseted look.
But not maybe what we
emphasising
were expecting from him.
And
I
you
wonder-
don't see corsets on the London catwalk very
No,
often,
we don't
unless
see
you're at
boobs
Vivian.
on the London catwalk ever. We were talking about this. The only things we've been seeing backs, and we've been seeing midriffs, and we've been seeing like clavicle, but you don't see.
I know, I've got bosom, and I know because I can never buy anything.
Yeah, well,
'cause
there you go,
nothing
you're
ever fits
sorted
me.
now.
I think I'd be arrested if I wore
Well,
that.
as long as there's going to be a diversity, he's going to be all right. But if it's kind of like the perfect breast always popping up, he might have a problem.
That's really
That's beautiful.
Yeah, and that's a
Absolutely
carry on from what he was
beautiful.
doing with his men, which is great.
Can't have enough of a good coat.
No, so nice.
Coat's
It's
a very
beautiful.
useful thing for a
It is a
London
buyer's
life.
dream.
They are,
the
and you don't have to
collection.
wear anything underneath it. You can just have the great coat.
Would you go out without anything underneath your
I've
coat?
gone to fashion parties where I know I'll be doing the dip in and out.
And
And just worn a really great coat with a pair of tights underneath.
This is very different from what he fielded with the menswear. It's almost like he's whacked all the colour back into the masculinity now, hasn't he? It's quite sombre.
I like the severity of it.
I
Yeah,
love
I
this.
do
about
as
it.
Beautiful,
well.
that jacket.
It's absolutely amazing.
It's a perfect autumn winter.
Rigorous,
But,
isn't
but it's so beautiful with the sort of soft skirt as well.
Now, would you know that was Jonathan if you'd seen it?
No.
No.
But we all said exactly that when we just saw the America Transu collection, and I think it's actually really refreshing to. I think if you looked a lot at it, you would be like, yeah, there's an element of Jonathan Saunders to that, but it's great to see someone move something forward.
That you would.
That you would,
yes,
yeah,
yes,
absolutely. I agree with you, and I think it is, again, it's this idea of thinking of fashion in terms of one's art, and you can
Evolution.
change that and reinterpret and
I
reinvent.
think, again, coming to the points that were made about the fact that he's taken his time to develop his business and his aesthetic, and I think this feels like a really confident. It is really spared, and pared back.
He's just such a glorious
Beautiful.
colourist.
But knows how to use it to the maximum
Look
effect.
at that.
I mean, that is just
Blissful.
That's
stunning.
beautifully styled. That's
Absolutely
gorgeous.
It feels like a moment of transition, though, doesn't it? Which takes a lot of confidence.
Yeah, it does take confidence. Yes, you can't do this.
But as much as it's transition, there are still those key pieces. There's like the quite directional knit. There's the beautiful coat. And I think that's
It's a
what
great
he's
piece of
so
colour.
Lots of beautiful
great
coats,
at.
actually. Lots of beautiful coats.
Knowing what to take
The,
through.
The hues, the kind of tonal value is quite Scottish, don't you think? I mean, we're back to him I can see myself in the background green there, definitely. That's wild. I'd love that.
What is that made of? It's amazing. Because he did that kind of teddy bear fur in his men's. I don't know if you guys thought that was incredible.
They're very wearable, don't you think?
Very.
It's one of those collections where, you know, sometimes you're looking at a collection only critically, and then there is that moment when you cross over and you think,
I love
if you
that.
got to the end of the runway and those clothes just fell into my pocket.
That
seems to be
That would look great on so many different types of women's bodies as well.
Yeah.
If you're gamine, a sweater looks great. If you're bigger, also very flattering.
But I always
Perfect,
think that with his stuff, it always feels like you could wear it in so many different ways on so many different shapes. You know, obviously there's certain looks that will fit a different body shape, but his stuff doesn't feel remotely exclusive. It feels very much like anyone could be a Jonathan Saunders girl.
It's interesting to look at the hairstyles as well.
Very
If you think of the
40s.
show before, you
Yeah.
had the fringes. Now you've got the kind of Hollywood glam almost there, haven't you?
Well, Alice Templey showed a complete Hitchcock blonde look today.
Yeah.
There's been quite a lot of very groomed hair this week.
I love the sweater over the dress.
I love
Yeah.
the sweater. Yeah.
Because we were talking about this with Alex Wang, how I love it when you see designers showing stuff that looks like it's how girls actually dress, and you know that looks like a really cool Jonathan Saunders girl who has the great dress, but she's coming home from the party, she's a bit chilly, so she puts the Jonathan
And
Saunders
it's very
jumper on top.
confident styling to put
Yeah.
a sweater over a great dress.
See, that passes the walk off the catwalk and just jump
Straight,
into my
Just jump
bag.
absolutely, yeah. I love
We
that
moved
collar.
into shopping now.
You see, that's
that
more of
collar
his,
is beautiful.
the signature style
you would
is
know,
playing
wouldn't
very
you?
well. Had he started that, then we'd all be, oh yeah, he's back. Yeah, no, very clever.
But isn't
Very
that
kind
great?
of cerebral in many ways, isn't it? He's joining it all.
Lovely.
These jumpers are beautiful.
Yeah, really beautiful.
Those
I love
colours
that deep
together,
V.
yeah, and also with the sleeves, quite sort
So flattering.
of very,
Yeah.
very flattering.
Yeah, the skinniest part of anyone's body.
Yeah,
Your
really.
wrist.
It feels very, we were saying this actually, we're saying a lot of similar stuff to our Mary discussion, which is great, because we were saying with Mary it felt very in tune to her shopper. You know, it felt like there were the pieces that you could shoot on some gorgeous young sort of Hollywood girl on a red carpet, but it felt like it was for the person that could actually afford to buy Mary Catranzo, and this feels like that as well. You know, the woman who can actually afford to wear Jonathan Saunders and wants to wear it.
I never ever think of him as an evening wear designer. And it's
No.
interesting to see that the evening looks coming
Actually,
through.
that's really interesting. I can't even think of an occasion where I've seen someone wear his evening wear on like a red carpet or anything like that. You'd never see.
Because he went through a period of doing very evening
Yeah.
collections and sort of maybe 2004, no, 2005. I can't quite remember my years, but I do remember seeing those very long dresses he did with the beautiful prints.
But that's what we're saying about him kind of finding his groove. You know, that became, you know, Roxana Inchik or Chris Kane's thing, and then his thing became doing, you know, the really great coat, the really great knit, and he's great.
That's so beautiful. Is it with the collar and, you know, the sort of top underneath?
There's a real subtlety to it.
It's very
Nothing
sophisticated.
shouty, is it?
No, it's
Something.
very sophisticated.
Although that's
That's
a little
lovely.
louder.
Yeah, but even then it's still pared back. You know, you feel this is somebody who's really confident. It's got those wrists again, which
Yeah, that's so beautiful.
it is.
I love
Yeah,
that.
that's amazing.
That's gorgeous.
I mean, you definitely
Yeah,
want
I
to wear
really
that on
want
the
that.
right. Yes, I can see you in that.
fully
Actually,
moved into shopping now. That's just what I
That
want to
is
wear
fantastic.
every day. That's so
Without a
good.
slip.
Obviously, yeah.
but the hair, I mean, the styling is.
The casting's
Fantastic.
amazing as
It's
well. It's got
really good,
really big
yeah.
girls that like to have. Some of those girls are absolutely gorgeous.
You see, I think the variety is there. We were saying earlier how Kylie wears his clothes, Michelle Obama wears his clothes. So there's a very different range within the design.
Should we see the next one?
I kind of feel these are sort of clothes you might show someone who doesn't know about London Fashion Week, doesn't know about
Yeah,
fashion, and say, this is what a designer collection looks like. They could still find parts that's relatable, but still see how beautiful this is and how different it is from the high street.
That's, I think, what I was
Ooh,
kind of...
hello,
that's
bosoms.
beautiful. Wow.
I would never have pegged that as a Jonathan
And I think
Saunders
it's
dress.
less
No, me
successful in many ways. It's kind of
I've-
asking to be reviewed,
If you-
whereas the others were
Yeah.
If you'd
It's-
asked me, I would have guessed Vivian.
Yes.
Yeah, Vivian
exactly.
Westwood, yeah. But I think that's what I was kind
But
of...
then that again
That's
looks
got
much
his
more
slam.
modern.
much more
Yeah.
modern, yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I really love that. I don't feel like I've seen someone put that line together with the with a camisole.
It feels how girls dress. I think that's the thing with this. It feels so relevant, but without feeling familiar, it still feels forward thinking.
Really
I think it
love
feels
that.
naughty as well. I think he's having a gentle
That's
giggle
also
here. Yeah,
interesting
he's
because
giving
they
us.
are very sensual and erotic, and yet they're longer and more covered than a lot of
It was
dresses
like
that you would
Oscar
see.
that was 4 inches below the knee in his collection. I feel that clothes are definitely starting to whisper, not shout.
Yeah.
No, definitely.
I mean,
And
that is amazing.
I'd quite like to be this woman.
Yeah.
I would.
Because she seems very calm and collected. As you said, she's not shouting.
But a real sense, but a real sense of who she is. Won't take any prisoners.
That corset is very bold, actually.
It is, isn't it?
But it's very cleverly done because it doesn't feel gimmicky and it doesn't feel like it's
Although I'm
shouting.
curious to know how that's going to appear in the selling collection.
Yeah, but I'm sure these looks, I think that's a styling trick. I think that would be available.
50 Shades of Saunders.
Indeed.
I love that very demure straight line there. As much as this is very saucy, there's something quite modest about it as well.
It's always very interesting to see how the clothes then translate in the showroom.
It'd be very interesting to see these ones.
So
See, I'm not quite so fond of...
That feels a bit familiar to me. That
what is the fabric there, do you think?
It looks like a laser. Or maybe it's digital print, actually.
I think it's a laser cut.
Yeah, well, you can't see around the...
I suspect this is a collection where you'd want to be on your gold chair with your nose
You would trying to grab me.
I would never have pegged that, Jonathan.
No, neither would I.
I
But it's
rather like
very
it.
2014, isn't it? I mean, I think that today's lady absolutely wants to go and
maybe-
flaunt and have fun and go there in a classic,
And it works.
beautifully cut
Latex frock.
Yes, why
And it
not?
works because it's not.
Why not?
The skirt is what makes it, isn't it? Yeah, it makes it different.
And nicely it harks back to that
very
beautiful
fashionable,
green dress with the same neckline.
And maybe he's trying to get in a bit on that red carpet thing, like why wouldn't someone want to wear that, wear it with a really great pair of shoes? It would be gorgeous. See this, I wouldn't pick this as Jonathan Saunders.
It really is a moment of transition.
Yeah,
it
really,
is. It's
really
very
is.
exciting
to watch.
very, very exciting.
But this is the first print we've seen, right?
I mean, there were echoes of that shape, weren't there, on the opening?
On the
sort of-
decorative piece,
yes,
the
sort of
embroidery.
coat and yes,
But they were replicas, weren't they?
They
Or was
were,
this the first sort of...
He's been looking at Nick Knight's flowers there. You see.
Who
I
hasn't?
think
That is the question.
Inspired by beautiful nature.
That's beautiful.
That's
That's
lovely.
Duchess of Cambridge ready. She'd look fab in that.
She would.
I think it's probably a bit
What's
racy.
going on with the bosom?
Give it 9
It
months.
looks like it's a latex, isn't that?
Yeah, it looks like latex.
So the Duchess of Cambridge in white latex.
I can see. I think
well,
she could
Alex
make it work.
She would
would
Yeah,
think that
Alex
would
Hume
work.
would be happy with that. We found a compromise.
It is. I like the way he's juxtaposing. I mean, he always does, but this is really interesting, isn't it? It's kind of surprising.
Oh.
Well done, John.
Yeah, should we give him a clap?
Definitely.
So what's our gut to this? How do we think he's moving his business forward? Because we kept saying that this feels very like a moment of transition, it feels new, but what do you think about that was so different for him?
Well, no sort of pattern and no print really. What there was obviously those stripes that were going, the gradation of stripes on the coats and those dresses at the beginning and the appliques, but those last pieces are the only things I don't think even vaguely approaching a print. So I think that's quite interesting.
I think also really understanding the female body and working with that and not being and really sculpting some of the clothes and the shapes, which I wasn't expecting that in the way that he's done it. Very
Are people getting
sophisticated.
tired of print, do you think? Because
I was just about to say exactly
if you just saw Mary Catranza as well, she did obviously print, but it was very much about structure and it was a dark palette.
I've got so bored of everyone saying, oh, you're London print.
Print, yeah.
Holly Fulton and it's
Peter Pilotto, everyone,
time for something new.
But people said that about the Central St Martin's show. There was not one single print in that show, and I know there's always going to be those dark sort of tunic dresses. That's very much kind of the St Martin's aesthetic, but that was a point that a lot of people made, is this the future, am I going to look very last season next next year.
I think it's with any sort of new development and new technology that digital print was extraordinary, and anybody who's creative is going to want to play with it for a while, and then suddenly you think, actually I can do something else with it. And that's what I really like about this collection, because he's actually using it to work with the shapes of the dresses and the shape of the form, and to make the collection work.
It was very subtle on those
Very
coats
subtle,
at the
yeah,
beginning,
very
which
subtle.
were my favourite things, I think. those
And
subtle
thoughtful,
coats.
because
Yeah.
we said originally that he was working on a panel, and that when he screen printed, he didn't just roll out the fabric. And so I think the way he's placed the different
Yes.
component parts
Look how that
is
folds around.
really fresh, and I would say very successful for the modern woman.
It felt for me like elements of all the best about London, but without feeling, it didn't feel like it was borrowing from anyone, but then there were bits of Norden, there were bits of Marion, there were bits of America Chan, you know, it all came together, but it was so Jonathan, but while being really, really great. You know, I found it interesting when you said you'd love to show that to someone and be like, look, this is what London fashion's about.
I'm less sure about the corsets, I must say.
That's why I was curious to see
Yeah.
whether they're a device or whether what we're going to see. I just always
store.
find
Whether it
that
be the belts, you know, because he had a
Yeah.
lot of the coats with belts as well.
Oh,
didn't
I
they?
always, that's why you want to go and do a re-see to actually
re-see.
find out what the pieces look like without all the show bells and whistles.
But it's certainly okay for someone to reinterpret their own
I
repertoire.
mean, I suspect that's an absolutely ravishing dress underneath there anyway, isn't it?
So what are you guys, I'm really actually interested to ask you this, what are you excited about for the rest of London Fashion Week? Who's going to be your highlight? It's hard to say when you haven't seen it, but...
Yes. Well, I'd like to go to the Tom Ford, but I don't think I'd be able to get a ticket for that. Unless I could be one of those bloggers.
Just force your way in. You can use some of the tips we've discussed.
Yeah. But I think the fact that he's showing here, that's really, really
I
exciting.
went to the Lorraine Scott lunch today.
Oh, did you?
Which was just crazy.
Yeah.
It was just off Parliament Square, and I think it must have been the Engineering Institute, because I kept seeing Faraday and Newton and names around. And it was like being at a conference. They had 2 rows on each side of the runway, one down here, one up here. There were 132 people, that was it. And everyone got served shepherd's pie in pots by waiters from Cellar Society who came down and they stopped and they faced everyone and they all went and bowed over with their shepherd's pies, because they had someone behind them telling them all to bow. And then as we tucked into our pies, the models came down the middle. It felt a little Marie Antoinette, because the photographers were watching us all eat pie before the girls came out. But it was immaculately produced, and to have both Lorraine Scott and Tom Ford showing here in one season is extraordinary.
It is extraordinary. It is
But it's
extraordinary.
Christopher Bailey we have to thank for this, because with no
absolutely.
Burberry, there'd be no American editors.
Absolutely.
When I was in the Wall Street Journal, we didn't come here because there were no advertisers, couldn't justify it. So now Moschino, Burberry, Chris Kane will obviously stay with his lovely big fat VPR check. It's so exciting to be in London right now.
Good time for London. That's a lovely note to end on, actually, because that's very positive for London. So should we give Jonathan a lovely round of applause?
Another one.
Yeah.